Okay, for today's lesson, we started off with a short quiz based on the last 2 days. And then we got into this topic, which is, should be a review for everyone. So we're talking about mean, median, mode, and range. These are topics that are covered in standards starting as early as 3rd grade, and they should be talked about really every year. Up through 8th grade also, so I'm sure these look very familiar. Here are the definitions that we're going to be using. So if you are just watching this, go ahead and take some time to write these down in your notes. Okay, so we're going to find each of these things for different sets of data. Number 1, it has the scores on a test out of 30, so there's 7 different scores here. The first thing I would do is rearrange them from least to greatest. And maybe I cross them out as I go to make sure that I'm really getting all of them. And then I want to look at, ignore that. Alright, so the mode here is the number that appears the most often. And for this example, I see that there's two different entries that are both 30, so that's going to be the most often here. And then the median, I just kind of go 1 in each direction until I get to the middle. That's going to be 21. So that is the median. And then for the range, I'm going to take the largest value, which is 30, and subtract 12. That gives me 18. Then for the mean, I need to find the average, so I'm going to add up all these terms. When I do that, I get 152, and I'm dividing by the number of terms that there are, which again is 7. 152 divided by 7 gives me about 21.7, so that's going to be the mean for number 1. Okay, for number 2, I'm going to start again by arranging these from least to greatest. And I see, if I'm looking for the mode, I don't see any number repeated, so there's no mode. And then for the range, I could do the biggest minus the smallest. That gives me 285. The median, if I go towards the middle, I have 2 numbers here, okay? So if you remember from the definition, when I have 2 middle entries, I have to take their average. So I do 97 plus 100. And divide by 2, which is going to give me 98.5. Okay, then the mean, I add them all up. I get 835 dividing by the number of terms, which is 6, gives me 139.16. This is interesting. The mean and the median are both supposed to be what we call measures of center, so they should kind of give us an idea of where the center of the data is. The median here, if you look, 98.5, that seems to be a pretty good representation of her tips from these days. But the mean is 139.16. And if you look at the first 5 entries, 139.16 is actually larger than all of those. So this may not be the best representation for her for this particular data. Okay, for examples 3 and 4, students did these on their own, but basically it's just the same thing. You would order these from least to greatest and find each of those things. So median you find by looking at the middle number. There's no mode because nothing's repeated. The range is 16, which you find by doing 93 minus 77. And then the mean, if you add them all up, you get 430. Divide that by 5, you get 86. This one, it's interesting to see that the mean and the median are exactly the same number. That tells you that the data is probably pretty consistent. There's the same amount that are below the average as the amount that are above the average then. So there's 2 entries below the average, 2 entries above the average, since the average is also the median. So that kind of gives you more information about the central sort of tendency of that data. Okay, number 4, putting these from least to greatest, we get this. And the the median, well, the mode, actually, I see there's 2 77s. If I go inwards, the median is actually also 72. I have 2 72s in the middle, so when I take the average of 72 and 72, I just get 72. The range here would be 26, since it's 96 minus 70. And the mean, I get about 75.8. By adding them up, I get 455, and then dividing that by 6, which is the number of entries here. Okay, so again, this should all really be review, but you're going to have to do this on a few of your problems for homework. Some of the more interesting things that we talked about were these questions, so some understanding more of what mean and median kind of represent. So the first question is, how can you determine the average for a data set? And the class said basically by finding the mean. So the average, when someone says the average, they are talking about the mean. So you would add up all the terms and divide by the number of terms that there are. Number 2 says, what is a situation where or in which the mean would not be the best measure of center? So this may be like in the example with the tips, where they were all kind of from like 75 to 100 something, and then there was one day where it was 360. So that number really pushed the mean to be a lot higher than sort of a natural center. Okay, so that would indicate that it may not be the best measure of center to use. If you had test scores that were mostly clustered around a particular value, but one score was a lot higher, would you prefer your teacher report your class grade using the median or the mean of the scores? This is pretty similar to the last question, so, and also to the test scores example, this one right here. You can see the median, if they have 5 that are kind of all clustered together and then a 6th one is a lot higher, the median stays kind of within that their typical range, and then the median bumps that up. So if you were a student in this case, you would probably prefer that your teacher use the mean of the scores. This last one's kind of fun. So can you give an example of a data set which has a mean that is twice the median? So I let students try to come up with a set of 5 data points that are 5 data entries that have a mean that's twice as big as the median. This one example may be 1, 2, 3. So say I want 5 numbers. Okay, so I know I want 3 to be the median. So the numbers that I put after need to be a lot bigger so that I can get a mean of 6. So I did 12 and 12. And when you add that up, you get, when you add those, you get, so 3 is the median, and then 12 and 12 is 24, plus 3 is 27, plus 2 and 1 is 30. 30 divided by 5 is 6. So that would give you a mean of 6 and a median of 3. Another example may be that one of the students gave was this, 13, 16, 19, 22, 100. If you look at this, the median is 19. And if I add those up, I get 170, and dividing by 5, that's 34. So she got pretty close here, actually, to doubling the median for the mean. What would have pushed it over the edge is maybe if we had, say, 150 here, then that would have made my total be 220. And then dividing that by 5, I would have gotten 44, which is more than double of the median. So, just interesting to see how, to mess with the data and see how we can manipulate it. But that's really all that we did today. You have homework on mean, median, mode, and range, and I will see you tomorrow. Thank you.